Today on the Daily Review, we're doing John Ford's 1962 Western masterpiece, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Find out today on the Daily Review with Joe LaRocca. Itchy nose. My eyes are itchy too. Oh, it's the fans blowing right in my face. Okay, there we go. Here's a movie from 1962. This is the West, sir, and when legend becomes fact, print the legend. This movie's great. I watched it again because I have to, I was saying that I'm doing that American genre film class. So one of those genres is Western, and I'm trying to, find the ones that are the most digestible and that have still have some sort of modern implications, because I think on some of the classic Westerns you can lose modern students fairly quickly if it's a little too slow. Because our modern audience's action standards are obviously way different. So someone just being and so going, it's not enough, you need a car chase, and that's tough in the West when there weren't cars and a horse can only go so fast, and so you're kind of screwed. This is kind of late in the American classic Western era. In fact, it might be the last one. I don't know. I should know enough about this. That's why I'm researching. But it feels like it's it doesn't end in a gunfight. It ends in a courtroom. It ends with the law, and not just street justice, but and I'm trying to think of other ones that end that are like this movie with the kind of modern style of telling it, and that don't end with somebody doesn't end this ends with progression into the future. Whereas most, I don't know, I'm not being clear about that as usual. Anyway, there's something about this that feels like it's the end of a certain style of American Western, because there's cloudiness in it, and that's when a genre starts to overstretch its in a good way. Kind of starts to break beyond its tropes when there's kind of a gray character in there. And so maybe it's Red River's up there too. I'm trying to think when that came out. That's another example of that's a John Wayne movie where it's he's kind of an asshole. He is the bad guy basically. Anyway, but I'm definitely not gonna, that's a really long movie. Anyway, basically it's not simply good versus evil in this. There's more going on than that, although obviously that's the general premise. So basically the movie is told like an episode from Forrest Gump. We see them as adults, or not as adult, but much older, having come back to town for a funeral for John Wayne's character. And they're a newspaper man's tell us the story, and he's oh, okay, and so it's Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne. Jimmy Stewart's a lawyer, and he and Vera Miles is his wife. He's now a senator, and they've come back, to the funeral of John Wayne. And Woody Strode's there too in old age makeup, and it's sweet. And he tells them, then it the whole movie's then a flashback of him telling this newspaper story, the story of the man who shot Liberty Valance. Liberty Valance is played by Lee Marvin, and he's just a thug. He's an open ranger, believes in the territories not being like keeping the West wild, like no fences, no property laws, no state laws and stuff. So you can kind of just let your cattle graze wherever, and it's just kind of like law of the land. Like you can just muscle somebody out, or you can, all sorts of crazy stuff. It's really well addressed in that movie, Open Range. It's like 3.5 hours about with Kevin Costner. It's kind of like discussing, in a lot of ways, it's the end of like wild America, because then we just start parceling it out, and putting fences around everything. Anyway, you can see both sides of that in that movie, but this one is siding on the fact that like we need laws, we need statehood. We can't just have like the biggest gang who has the most horses like just take over. You know what I mean? It's not very democratic. It's more whatever, horseological. Excuse me. So yeah. Anyway, the movie starts with Jimmy Stewart coming into town, just out of law school, fresh faced, except he still looks 50 because he always looks 50 even when he was like in his 20s. He's like that, got that Steve Martin thing, and he shows up and his carriage gets fucking taken by Liberty Valance, and he just beats him up, and Liberty Valance, takes their money and stuff. So I'm gonna get back at him with with law, like the actual, not street justice, not justice with a gun, but justice with within the system. So while he recuperates from his injuries, lives in the town and becomes friends with Vera Miles, who's Hallie, who is basically John Wayne's girl. So there's like a love triangle there. And John Wayne's character, Tom Donovan, is a rancher who basically doesn't believe in, like, that he thinks that the only way to get things done is with a gun, that's he's moral, like he's on the right side of it, but he just doesn't think that like bureaucracy is going to change anything. So we have that's where he kind of like, that's where a twist is added into this. There's now a character who's like, they're like both good, but in the kind of framework of the movie, it's saying it's like kind of an anti-violence movie. So his character is kind of like, you're kind of going against what our protagonist is trying to accomplish by like not having everything be lawless. And there's that love triangle. Then there's also like a hate triangle between Lee Marvin's character, Liberty Valance, Tom Donovan, John Wayne, and Jimmy Stewart's character, Ransom. And they like, they're like, they all butt heads in different ways, and it's fucking great. It's so well written, and the characters are so good. So there's this like love triangle, and then this fighting triangle, and it's like you gotta, like at the halfway point of the movie, after that point I won't really spoil anything, although Liberty Valance does get shot. It's in the title, it's gonna happen. But at the halfway point, basically Rance is like, Jimmy Stewart's character is like, I gets a gun basically and learns to shoot to a certain degree. And it's not like a fucking montage like a cheesy movie. Like it's just like, okay, so he is at least turning, like in terms of structure, screenplay structure, it's like this is the moment, or this is the part where it's like, okay, he's at least sort of taking into consideration John Wayne's perspective. He's like, maybe he's right. Maybe out here in the West, out here in the fields, we fight for our meals, and maybe a book is not stronger, a pen is not mightier than the sword, or whatever. So I don't know, screenplay wise, it's like a fucking diamond, like all these things are like perfectly measured out. So yeah, let me see, I wrote notes here. So one of the things that Liberty Valance does is like start a school and teaches everybody to read and write. Again, not using a montage, which is great. Like this is where we're getting more modern filmmaking. I feel like because it's 1962, we're getting away from like kind of cliche things and cliche Western things. Although there's a few in this, but we're kind of moving away from this because soon after this, the Westerns will kind of die out a little bit in America, and then will come back into popularity through the spaghetti westerns, like in a few more years, like in the late 60s, early 70s, you know. And you know, they like kind of become popular again, but they're like a totally different style than this, like of good versus evil and valor or whatever. So yeah, it's that idea of the open range, which is like freedom, but not in the way like Liberty Valance. It's not freedom in the positive sense. It's like selfishness. It's like only looking out for yourself kind of freedom, not freedom like it's freedom to like I'm gonna do whatever I want and not take into consideration anybody else. And so like that's what Liberty Valance represents. And then there's like statehood, which represents like production and progression. You know, it's like, oh, we're gonna get everything organized, and there'll be laws, and it won't be like, oh, just the way of the gun. You know, and that's represented by Rance. And then it's like, oh shit, which way is Tom or you know, Tom Dunphy, Dunafin, sorry, John Wayne, what side? He's the wild card, like in the triangle. It's like which side is he gonna come down on ultimately? Even though we know that he's, you know, he likes Jimmy Stewart's character, but also it's like, oh, but also maybe he thinks Jimmy Stewart's getting in with his girl, even if it's unintentional. You know what I mean? Maybe he would change his mind because you're not 100% sure about his character. So like, it's not a movie where you can predict what's gonna happen, even though it's well within its genre. You know, because it rides the line a bit. And it introduces that character that's kind of a wild card, kind of changes the stakes of everything, and you couldn't like predict it. Whereas I forget, there were some movies I've watched recently where it's like within the first 10 minutes you're like, yeah, okay, this will probably happen, even if they do it well. Like I mean, even King of Staten Island, which I do like. You like some of the setup and payoff things. It's like, yeah, dude, that's screenplay 101. Whereas in this, it's a bit. They hit it a bit more. Now, the one problem is that the kind of final part of the movie is like an election, essentially. And it's good, but it feels a little bit anticlimactic, obviously. But they tie in a thing where we get another flashback, and then we finish the wraparound story. So it's pretty fucking strong, structure-wise. There's one part I'll just say once, because obviously Liberty Valance is killed. We know that from the title, but the doctor, like earlier on, the doctor yells at Liberty Valance. He's like, "God damn it! Like I'm always patching up people you shot, you know, something along those lines, you know." So we know that the doctor doesn't like him, and then once Liberty Valance is shot dead, they're like all of his little henchmen are like, "Doctor, get the doctor!" And the doctor comes out and goes, "Get me whiskey." And someone gives him whiskey, and he chugs like half a bottle of it, and then he just kind of kicks Liberty Valance over. You know what I mean? Like he just kind of pushes him over, looks up, and goes, "Dead." And walks away. I was like, "This is fucking great." In the end, when we find out kind of like what like the mystery is resolved, there's an awesome transition where John Wayne blows smoke into the camera, and then they use that to like filter fade, and then it does like a wipe to get back into it. He wipes the lens, you know, walks in front of the lens and it goes black, and they use that to transition back to like modern, like, you know, a flashback within a flashback. It's awesome. It's very awesome. And yeah, overall, it's awesome. But yeah, the ending is a little bit long, and it's, I think, strange for Western. So maybe that's a big thing, you know. And so like ultimately, the movie's about like that you need violence to start a revolution. This is where it kind of ties in. Like violence has its place. The gun has its place in sparking radical, a change, stir up the system. There needs to be some sort of agitated disruptor or whatever. And it's usually violence. But then that can lead to political civic reform via like education and elections and good morals and good role models for you to like, and then that's what gives your society good morals. If you have leaders that clearly have bad morals, it's like it definitely trickles down. Anyway, I'm hungry, so kind of want to eat. So I'm just gonna play a little music. Watch Liberty Valance. It's on Amazon Prime, and several movies I talked about were on. I think I saw Love Lies on there, and a few that I thought were kind of hard to find. But good job, Prime. Fuck Netflix, man. There's not much on there. Um, yeah, cool. All right, let's see. Let's see what's on here.